In the cold vacuum of space, where silence reigns eternal, the greatest sound humanity had ever heard was the absence of voices from New Terra. 12 billion souls, mothers singing lullabies, children laughing in playgrounds, farmers tending their crops under alien suns, all reduced to cosmic dust in a single calculated strike. The Zephyrian Collective thought they were sending a message. They believed that by erasing one human world, they could force the scattered colonies of mankind to bow before their ancient empire. They saw humans as nothing more than upstart primitives who had dared to settle in their galaxy without permission. They were wrong. What they had actually done was awaken something that had slumbered in humanity's genetic code since the first cave dweller picked up a rock to defend his family. They had triggered an evolutionary response that had carried mankind from the African savanna to the stars, the unstoppable fury of a species that refuses to be prey. Within 72 hours of New Terra's destruction, every human colony, every space station, every mining outpost, and research facility received the same message from Earth's United Colonial Command. They took our children. Now we take everything. The largest fleet in human history began to assemble. Not hundreds of ships, not thousands, 300,000 warships, each one carrying the rage of an entire species and a simple promise. The Zephyrian Collective would learn why humans had conquered a galaxy in just 3 centuries. This is the story of what happens when you mistake humanity's mercy for weakness. Admiral Sarah Chun stood before the massive viewport of the UCS Retribution, watching the debris field that had once been New Terra drift through space like scattered diamonds against the black. Each glittering fragment represented a life cut short, a dream destroyed, a future stolen. The silence in the command center was deafening. No one dared speak as they witnessed the aftermath of genocide. "Sir," Lieutenant Murphy's voice cracked as he turned from his console. "Long-range sensors confirm there are no survivors. The entire planetary mass has been reduced to particles no larger than a basketball." Chin closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of 12 billion deaths settle on her shoulders. She had served in the Colonial Navy for 30 years, had seen battles that claimed thousands, even millions of lives. But this was different. This was deliberate extinction. "How?" she asked quietly. "Planetary disintegration beam, Admiral," came the response from Chief Science Officer Dr. Yamamoto. "The energy signature is consistent with Zephyrian technology, but the scale, sir, this weapon required the power output of an entire star. They built something specifically to erase worlds." The tactical display showed the horrific efficiency of the attack. New Terra had been a jewel among human colonies, fertile plains stretching across 3 continents, cities that gleamed like silver under twin suns, universities where the brightest minds from across human space came to learn and discover. Now, it was cosmic dust scattered across several million cubic kilometers of space. "Admiral," Communications Officer Reyes spoke up, his face pale, "we're receiving priority transmission from Earth Command. Fleet Admiral Morrison wants to speak with you immediately." Chun straightened her uniform and walked to the private communication booth. The hologram of Fleet Admiral James Morrison materialized, his weathered face grim with barely contained rage. "Sarah," Morrison's voice was steady, but Chun could see the storm brewing behind his eyes. "I need you to confirm what our sensors are telling us." "Confirmed, sir. New Terra is gone. All 12 billion inhabitants are dead. The Zephyrian Collective used some kind of planet killer weapon." Morrison was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried the weight of humanity's fury. "They sent us a message along with their attack. Do you want to hear it?" Chin nodded grimly. Morrison's expression hardened as he began to recite. "To the human infestation poisoning our galaxy, your species has 30 cycles to withdraw from all worlds beyond your origin system. New Terra serves as demonstration of our resolve. Comply or face extinction. The Zephyrian Collective claims what has always belonged to us." The Admiral felt something cold and terrible crystallizing in her chest. "What are our orders, sir?" "Your orders, Admiral Chun, are to return to Earth immediately. We're implementing War Protocol Omega. Morrison's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Every human ship, every colonial fleet, every explorer vessel scattered across the galaxy, they're all coming home. We're going to show the Zephyrians what humanity does to those who murder our children. The connection ended, leaving Chun staring at the empty hologram projector. War Protocol Omega hadn't been activated since the Unification Wars 2 centuries ago. It meant total mobilization. Every human world would contribute every ship they had. Every space dock would work around the clock building new vessels. Every man and woman capable of military service would be called to arms. But more than that, it meant humanity was done playing by the galaxy's rules. As the retribution turned toward Earth, Chun began receiving reports from across human space. The news of New Terra's destruction was spreading through the colonies like wildfire, and the response was immediate and overwhelming. On Mars, the massive shipyards that had been building cargo vessels suddenly retooled for warship production. The asteroid mining stations of the belt began forging hull plating instead of commercial metals. Europa's ice miners started producing military-grade fuel. But it was the response from the outer colonies that truly revealed humanity's transformation. These weren't the desperate preparations of a species fighting for survival. These were the methodical preparations of predators gearing up for a hunt. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood in the primary laboratory of Titan Research Station, watching her colleagues systematically destroy 15 years of peaceful scientific research. They were erasing every trace of their work on gravitational manipulation, quantum communications, and temporal mechanics. Not because the research was dangerous, but because they were about to weaponize it. "Are you sure about this, Elena?" Dr. Park asked as he initiated the deletion of their files on peaceful energy generation. "Once we cross this line, there's no going back." Vasquez looked out the window at the rings of Saturn, remembering the children from New Terra who had visited their station just 6 months ago as part of a student exchange program. Bright young minds who had been so excited to see the research station, who had asked endless questions about the mysteries of the universe. Now they were dead. All of them. "They made the choice for us when they murdered children," she replied coldly. "Upload everything to the Military Research Division. It's time humanity stopped being polite." Across human space, the same scene was playing out. Research stations, universities, corporate laboratories, all of them were sharing technologies that had been kept peaceful for centuries. Fusion reactors became fusion bombs. Gravity manipulation became gravity weapons. Quantum entanglement became instantaneous military communications across galactic distances. The Zephyrians had thought they were attacking a young species barely capable of interstellar travel. What they had actually done was give humanity permission to stop holding back. Captain Maria Santos watched from the bridge of the exploration vessel Magellan as the ship's peaceful survey equipment was replaced with military hardware. Her crew of scientists and explorers were being transformed into soldiers, but she could see no reluctance in their faces, only cold determination. "Captain," her first officer reported, "we've received our new mission parameters. We're to proceed to the Kepler sector and begin reconnaissance of Zephyrian shipping lanes." Santos nodded. The Magellan had spent 10 years mapping uncharted systems, discovering new worlds suitable for colonization. Now it would map enemy positions for the fleet that was coming. As reports continued to flood in from across human space, a pattern emerged that would have terrified any species that truly understood what they were seeing. Humanity wasn't just preparing for war. They were preparing for the complete annihilation of their enemy. On Europa, the great forges were producing not just warships, but specialized vessels designed for psychological warfare. Ships equipped with broadcasting equipment that would ensure every Zephyrian in the galaxy heard humanity's response to their ultimatum. In the Centauri system, the military academies were analyzing every scrap of intelligence on Zephyrian culture, biology, and psychology. They weren't just planning to defeat their enemy. They were planning to make them suffer for what they had done. The orbital shipyards around Earth worked around the clock, their automated systems producing warships at a rate that would have been impossible just decades earlier. The designs weren't just weapons of war. They were instruments of vengeance, each one carrying enough firepower to level a city. But perhaps most terrifying of all was the message that began broadcasting from every human world, space station, and ship in the galaxy. It wasn't sent to the Zephyrians. It was sent to every other intelligent species in the galaxy. The message was simple. Humanity does not forgive those who murder children. Any species that aids the Zephyrian collective will share their fate. Any species that stands aside will be left in peace. Choose wisely. Within hours of the broadcast, diplomatic communications flooded in from dozens of species. Ancient empires that had ruled the galaxy for millennia suddenly found themselves very interested in maintaining neutrality with the upstart humans. The Altarian Republic, which had controlled 3 spiral arms for 50,000 years, sent a formal declaration of neutrality. The crystalline hegemony, whose technology was so advanced that they had been considered gods by younger species, quietly withdrew their forces from all systems adjacent to human space. They had all made the same calculation. Whatever humanity was about to do to the Zephyrians, they wanted no part of it. Admiral Chun returned to find Earth transformed. The beautiful blue world she had left was now surrounded by a cloud of metal and fury that stretched from Luna to the asteroid belt. Shipyards, weapons platforms, and fleet assembly points filled every orbit. The peaceful world that had given birth to humanity's expansion among the stars was now the beating heart of the largest war machine in galactic history. As the Retribution docked at the primary naval station, Chun received a summons to Earth Command. The meeting that awaited her would determine not just the fate of the Zephyrian collective, but the future of humanity itself. The transformation was complete. The species that had once been content to explore and colonize in peace was gone. In its place stood something that the galaxy had never seen before, humanity unleashed with all the fury and ingenuity that had carried them from the caves to the stars. The Zephyrians had wanted to send a message. Now they were about to receive humanity's response, delivered by 300,000 warships and written in fire across the void. The hunt was about to begin. The war room beneath Geneva had been carved from solid rock during the early days of human spaceflight, designed to withstand planetary bombardment. Now it served as the nerve center for humanity's transformation into something the galaxy had never encountered before. Admiral Chun descended into the depths of Earth Command, passing through security checkpoints that scanned not just her identity, but her quantum signature, technology that hadn't existed when she first joined the Navy. Everything was changing at a pace that would have been impossible to imagine just weeks ago. The massive holographic display that dominated the war room showed a 3-dimensional map of human space, but it no longer looked like the peaceful colonial territory she remembered. Red indicators marked military installations that were sprouting like cancer across every system. Green showed the massive fleets converging on predetermined assembly points. And at the center of it all, Earth pulsed like an angry heart, pumping ships and weapons into the void. Fleet Admiral Morrison stood before the display with the Joint Chiefs, their faces illuminated by the cold light of preparation. When Chin approached, she could see that Morrison had aged years in the weeks since New Terra's destruction. Admiral Chun. Morrison's voice carried the weight of command that had been forged in the fires of transformation. Your reconnaissance of a New Terra system provided us with valuable intelligence about their weapons. Now we need you to take command of Battle Group 7. Chun felt her breath catch. Battle groups were massive formations, typically consisting of 50 to 100 ships. How many vessels, sir? 15,000, Admiral. 15,000 of the most advanced warships humanity has ever built, all constructed in the last 6 weeks. Morrison's expression was grim. We've had 3 centuries to perfect our technology in peace. Now we're about to show the galaxy what we can do when we stop being peaceful. The scale was staggering. Chun had commanded fleets before, but never anything approaching this magnitude. What's our target, sir? The Zephyrian Forward Fleet came the answer from General Rodriguez, head of colonial intelligence. Our deep reconnaissance indicates they've assembled a force of approximately 8,000 ships at the Veil Nebula, positioned to strike at our core worlds. They believe they're dealing with a primitive species that will crumble after losing one world. Rodriguez activated a tactical display showing the nebula and the enemy positions. Intelligence suggests the Zephyrians have never faced a species that could match their technology. For 50,000 years, they've been the apex predators of this galaxy. Every species they've encountered has either submitted or been exterminated. Until now, Morrison added quietly. Show her the fleet composition, General. The display shifted to show the human armada assembling at the staging points. Chen's mind reeled at what she was seeing. The force gathering wasn't just massive, it was revolutionary. Ships that didn't exist in any tactical manual, weapons systems that redefined the nature of space combat, strategies that threw out millennia of accepted military doctrine. These ship classes, Chen said, studying the displays, I don't recognize half of them. Dr. Yamamoto, who had apparently been promoted to Chief of Naval Research, stepped forward. That's because we've been building them for exactly 18 days, Admiral. When the research moratorium was lifted, every peaceful technology we've developed for the last 3 centuries became a weapon. The doctor activated detailed schematics that made Chen's head spin. Ships that could manipulate gravity to crush enemy vessels like tin cans. Fighters that use quantum tunneling to appear inside enemy hulls. Weapons that could ignite stars, collapse space-time, or simply delete matter from existence. The Phantom-class destroyers use our teleportation research, Yamamoto explained clinically. They can appear anywhere within a light year instantaneously. The Reaper-class battleships mount temporal displacement weapons that age their targets into dust. The Nightmare-class carriers deploy fighters that exist in quantum superposition until they choose to attack. Chun studied the specifications with growing amazement and horror. These aren't just weapons. They're war crimes waiting to happen. War crimes assume there are laws governing warfare between species. Morrison replied coldly. The Zephyrians ended that when they murdered 12 billion children. Now there are only predators and prey, and we're done being prey. The briefing continued for hours as Chun absorbed the magnitude of humanity's transformation. The peaceful exploration ships had been replaced by vessels designed to inspire terror. The defensive stations had become forward operating bases for an invasion force. The research facilities had become weapons laboratories that would have been banned under every treaty humanity had ever signed. But perhaps most shocking was the psychological warfare division. Humanity had spent decades studying every known species in the galaxy, learning their cultures, their fears, their weaknesses. Now, that knowledge was being weaponized with clinical precision. We know the Zephyrians are an ancient species, explained Dr. Sarah Kim, the new head of xenopsychological warfare. They've ruled this galaxy for 50 millennia. They've never encountered resistance. They couldn't crush through superior technology and overwhelming force. Their entire culture is based on the assumption that they are the apex species. Kim activated a series of recordings that made Chen's skin crawl. They showed Zephyrian communications intercepts, translated and analyzed by the most advanced AI systems humanity possessed. They don't see other species as people, Kim continued. They see them as resources to be managed or obstacles to be removed. This isn't evil as we understand it. It's simply how they view reality. They are incapable of comprehending that a younger species could be their equal, let alone their superior. Which means, Morrison added, they have no idea what's coming for them. Chun was shown to her new command ship, the UCS Prometheus, a vessel so advanced it barely seemed real. The ship was 2 kilometers long and bristled with weapons that could sterilize planets or crack moons. Its hull was composed of metamaterials that could adapt to any threat. Its engines could outrun light itself, and its weapons could unmake the fundamental forces that held matter together. But It was the crew that truly shocked her. These weren't the career military officers she was used to commanding. These were refugees from New Terra, volunteers whose families had died in the attack, colonial militia who had watched the funeral pyres of their worlds. Every person aboard the ship carried the cold fury of someone who had lost everything and wanted revenge. Commander Lisa Park, her new first officer, had lost her wife and 2 children when New Terra died. Chief Engineer Tom Bradley had watched his parents' retirement home evaporate in the attack. Weapons Officer Captain Janet Cruz had been on leave visiting New Terra when the planet was destroyed. She had survived only because she was aboard a transport that had left the system hours before. "Admiral," Commander Park said as Chun took her first tour of the bridge, "the crew wants you to know that we understand what you're asking of us. We're not just fighting for humanity. We're fighting for the right to exist without someone else's permission." The bridge was a marvel of technology and fury combined. Every station was designed for maximum efficiency in combat. Every display showed information that could be used to destroy enemy forces. The central command chair was surrounded by tactical displays that gave Chun control over not just her ship, but her entire 15,000-vessel battle group. As Chun familiarized herself with her new command, reports continued to arrive from across human space that painted a picture of transformation so complete it was almost unrecognizable. The Titan research stations had abandoned their peaceful experiments in favor of developing weapons that could manipulate time itself. The Europa laboratories were growing bioweapons specifically designed to target Zephyrian physiology. The Mars shipyards were producing vessels at a rate that defied physics, until you realized they were using temporal manipulation to build ships faster than time itself would normally allow. But perhaps most disturbing was the report from the Proxima Centauri system. The peaceful agricultural colony had been transformed into a massive military academy where human children were being trained in the arts of war by veterans who had faced alien threats before. These weren't child soldiers. They were the next generation of humanity, being prepared for a galaxy that no longer had room for peaceful species. The final briefing came from Admiral Morrison himself, delivered in a private communication that carried the weight of absolute authority. "Sarah," Morrison said, his image flickering in her ready room, "what I'm about to tell you doesn't leave this room. We're not just planning to defeat the Zephyrians. We're planning to remake them." Chun felt a chill run down her spine. "Sir, our xenobiologists have been studying their physiology. We've developed weapons that don't just kill Zephyrians. They can rewrite their genetic code, alter their brain chemistry, change their fundamental nature. We're going to turn their apex predators into prey animals, their warriors into pacifists, their leaders into followers." The implications were staggering. "Admiral, that's not warfare. That's species modification. It's justice," Morrison replied coldly. "They wanted to exterminate humanity because they saw us as inferior. We're going to show them what true superiority looks like." As her ship prepared to depart for the first engagement, Chin received one final communication that would haunt her for the rest of the war. It was a message from the outer colonies, from the frontier worlds that had been humanity's newest expansion into the galaxy. The message was simple. We were explorers once. We were builders, dreamers, scientists. They took that from us when they murdered our children. Now we're something else. Now we are what nightmares are made of. The Great Fleet began to move, 300,000 ships departing human space in perfect formation. They moved with purpose that was both beautiful and terrifying, like a storm front advancing across the galaxy. Chun stood on her bridge and watched the stars wheel past as her battle group accelerated toward their first target. Behind them, human space fell away into darkness. Ahead lay the Zephyrian Empire, 50,000 years of galactic dominance about to meet 3 centuries of human ingenuity unleashed. The transformation was complete. Humanity had shed its peaceful nature like a snake shedding skin, revealing something underneath that the galaxy had never seen before, a species that could match any threat, overcome any challenge, and visit upon its enemies a justice so complete it would become legend. The Zephyrians had wanted to send a message about superior species and inferior ones. They were about to learn that they had gotten it exactly backwards. The Veil Nebula burned with artificial fire as 300,000 human warships emerged from hyperspace in perfect battle formation. Admiral Chin stood on the bridge of the Prometheus, watching tactical displays that showed the impossible scope of what humanity had accomplished in just 2 months. The Zephyrian forward fleet that had been assembled to crush humanity's remaining colonies suddenly found itself facing something that had never existed before in galactic history. A human armada that outnumbered them 37-1, equipped with weapons that rewrote the laws of physics. "Admiral," Commander Park reported, her voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. "All battle groups report ready for engagement. The enemy fleet is attempting to flee, but our interdiction fields are preventing their escape." Chun studied the tactical display, showing 8,000 Zephyrian ships trapped in the nebula like insects in amber. For 50,000 years, this species had been the apex predators of the galaxy. They had destroyed civilizations, enslaved species, and ruled through fear and superior technology. Now they were learning what it felt like to be prey. "Open a channel to the Zephyrian flagship," Chun ordered. "Let's see if they want to surrender before we demonstrate why that would be wise." The main screen flickered to life, revealing the command bridge of a massive Zephyrian dreadnought. The aliens were tall, scaled beings with 4 arms and compound eyes that reflected their ancient arrogance even in the face of overwhelming odds. Admiral Kekthar, the commander of their fleet, stared at Chun with contempt that had been bred into his species for millennia. "Human," Kekthar's voice carried through the translator with bitter disdain, "you may have assembled a large fleet, but numbers mean nothing against superior Zephyrian technology. We have ruled this galaxy since before your species discovered fire. Withdraw now, and we may allow some of your worlds to survive." Chun felt something cold settle in her chest as she looked at this creature who still believed he was the apex predator in this encounter. "Admiral Kekthar, you seem to be under the impression that this is a negotiation. Allow me to correct that misunderstanding." She gestured to her weapons officer. "Captain Cruz, please demonstrate our Reaper-class battleship capabilities on that asteroid cluster to our right." One of Chin's massive battleships, the UCS Retribution, turned its primary weapon toward a cluster of asteroids roughly the size of a small moon. The temporal displacement cannon fired a beam of accelerated time that struck the rocks and aged them billions of years and seconds. Chun and her crew watched as the asteroids simply crumbled into dust, consumed by entropy itself. "That," Chin said calmly as Kekthar's compound eyes widened in shock, "was a demonstration of one weapon system on one ship. I have 15,000 ships under my command, Admiral, and they each mount weapons that would have been considered impossible just 3 months ago." The Zephyrian commander's arrogance was finally beginning to crack. "This is some trick, some illusion. No species could develop such technology so quickly." "You're right," Chin agreed. "No normal species could. But, you see, Admiral, you made a critical error in your assessment of humanity. You assumed we were like every other species you've encountered over the last 50,000 years. You assumed we would break when you murdered our children." Chun stood and walked closer to the screen, her expression growing colder with each word. "What you actually did was give us permission to stop pretending to be a peaceful species. What you're facing now isn't the humanity that explored the galaxy and built colonies among the stars. What you're facing is the humanity that conquered an entire planet armed with nothing but sticks and stones, the humanity that turned every challenge into an opportunity, the humanity that never learned how to give up." Around them, the human fleet began to demonstrate just how thoroughly humanity had transformed itself. Ships that could exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously appeared and disappeared around the Zephyrian formation. Fighters that used quantum mechanics to be in several places at once swarmed through enemy ranks. Weapons that manipulated gravity turned Zephyrian dreadnoughts into compressed metal spheres. But the true horror came when the Psychological Warfare Division began their work. Dr. Kim had spent months studying Zephyrian culture and psychology, and she had created something specifically designed to break their ancient confidence. Admiral, reported Lieutenant Murphy from Communications, the Psywar Division is broadcasting on all Zephyrian frequencies. The transmission that went out to every Zephyrian ship was simple but devastating. It was a recording of every species the Zephyrians had destroyed over the last 50,000 years, played simultaneously with tactical data, showing just how thoroughly outnumbered and outgunned they were. Chen watched as Kekthar's composure completely shattered. For the first time in his species' long history of dominance, the Zephyrian commander was seeing his own people from the perspective of their victims, helpless, outmatched, and facing extinction. "This is impossible," Kekthar whispered, his forearms shaking. "We are the Zephyrian Collective. We have ruled this galaxy since the dawn of civilization. You cannot simply unmake 50,000 years of supremacy." "Watch us," Chen replied quietly. The engagement that followed would be remembered as the moment galactic history pivoted on its axis. The Zephyrian fleet, which had expected to face a desperate last stand by a broken species, instead encountered something that had never existed before: human military technology unleashed without restraint or mercy. Ships that could manipulate time turned Zephyrian vessels into dust before they were even fired upon. Weapons that controlled gravity crushed enemy formations like a giant's fist. Fighters that existed in quantum superposition attacked from directions that shouldn't have been possible. But it was the systematic precision of humanity's assault that truly broke the enemy's spirit. Every Zephyrian ship was disabled rather than destroyed, their crews captured rather than killed. The humans weren't just winning. They were demonstrating that they could have killed every Zephyrian in the fleet in the first minutes of combat, but had chosen not to. The message was clear. Humanity didn't just have superior firepower. They had such overwhelming superiority that they could afford to show mercy even to those who had committed genocide against them. "Admiral Kekthar," Chun said as Zephyrian ships surrendered one by one around them, "you're going to carry a message back to your leadership. Tell them that this fleet represents approximately 1% of our total military capability. Tell them that we have weapons they cannot comprehend, strategies they cannot counter, and a determination they cannot break." The Zephyrian admiral stared at her with something approaching religious terror. "What do you want from us?" "Nothing," Chen replied, and the simplicity of the answer seemed to terrify Kekthar more than any threat could have. "We don't want your worlds, your resources, or your submission. We want you to understand that the age of Zephyrian dominance is over. You ruled this galaxy through fear and superior technology. We're demonstrating that both of those advantages no longer exist." As the human fleet prepared to depart, leaving the captured Zephyrian vessels to be picked up by their own rescue ships, Chen received a communication from Fleet Admiral Morrison that confirmed what she had already begun to suspect. "Phase 1 complete," Admiral Morrison reported. "All human battle groups have successfully engaged Zephyrian forces across 17 sectors. Enemy casualties are minimal. We're not here to commit genocide. We're here to break their spirit." Chen nodded, understanding the strategy. Humanity wasn't seeking to exterminate the Zephyrians. They were seeking to psychologically destroy the very foundations of their dominance. Every engagement was designed to demonstrate that the ancient empire was no longer the apex species of the galaxy. Over the next several weeks, reports flooded in from across Zephyrian space that painted a picture of systematic humiliation. Human fleets appeared wherever Zephyrian forces gathered, demonstrated overwhelming superiority, and then simply left. They didn't occupy worlds or demand surrender. They simply proved over and over again that they could destroy the Zephyrian Collective whenever they chose to. The psychological impact was devastating. A species that had ruled through fear and superiority for 50,000 years suddenly discovered they were neither fearsome nor superior. Their own subject species began to rebel, sensing weakness for the first time in millennia. But the true masterstroke came when humanity revealed the extent of their transformation. Dr. Yamamoto's research teams had spent weeks analyzing captured Zephyrian technology, and what they discovered changed everything. Admiral, Dr. Yamamoto reported during a fleet-wide briefing, "We've reverse-engineered their entire technological base. Their weapons, their ships, their planet-killer device. We can now build all of it, but better." The implications were staggering. Humanity had not only matched the Zephyrians' 50,000-year technological advantage, they had surpassed it in a matter of months. More importantly, the doctor continued, "We've developed countermeasures for every weapon system they possess. Their planet killer beam can now be deflected by our defensive grids. Their ships can be disabled by our quantum disruptors. They have no weapon that can threaten us, and we have dozens of weapons that can destroy them." The final blow came when humanity made their intentions clear to the entire galaxy. A broadcast was sent to every inhabited world, every space station, every ship in the galaxy. The message was delivered by Fleet Admiral Morrison himself, speaking from the bridge of the massive UCS Vengeance. "Citizens of the galaxy," Morrison said, his voice carrying the authority of humanity's newfound power. "For 50,000 years, you have lived under the dominance of the Zephyrian Collective. They ruled through fear, through superior technology, and through the assumption that they were the apex species of this galaxy." The Admiral paused, letting the weight of his words settle across thousands of worlds. "Today, humanity declares that age officially ended. We have demonstrated that the Zephyrian Empire can be defeated. We have shown that their technology can be countered. We have proven that their supremacy was an illusion." Morrison's expression grew stern as he delivered humanity's final message. "The Zephyrian Collective has 30 standard days to withdraw all military forces to their core systems. They will dismantle their planet-killer weapons. They will release all subject species from their control. They will pay reparations for the 12 billion human lives they murdered on New Terra." The ultimatum that followed would reshape galactic politics forever. If they refuse, humanity will demonstrate that we possess the capability to do to their worlds what they did to ours. The difference is we will give them the choice they denied our children. The response from across the galaxy was immediate and overwhelming. Ancient subject species threw off Zephyrian control. Neutral empires declared their support for humanity's demands. Even species that had been allies of the collective began distancing themselves from the former apex predators. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Prometheus as the human fleet began its triumphant return to Earth. Around her, the greatest armada in galactic history moved with purpose and precision, carrying with them the knowledge that they had fundamentally changed the nature of power in the galaxy. The Zephyrian response came exactly 30 days later. Their emperor, speaking from the throne world that had ruled the galaxy for 50 millennia, delivered a message of complete capitulation. They would withdraw their forces, dismantle their superweapons, and pay whatever reparations humanity demanded. But, perhaps most importantly, they formally acknowledged humanity as the new apex species of the galaxy, the inheritors of the position they had held for so long. As Chun watched Earth grow larger in the viewport, she reflected on what humanity had accomplished. In just 2 months, they had transformed from peaceful explorers into the most powerful military force the galaxy had ever seen. They had taken a species that had ruled for 50,000 years and reduced them to trembling vassals. But the true victory wasn't military. It was philosophical. Humanity had proven that no species, no matter how ancient or powerful, had the right to decide who could exist and who must die. They had demonstrated that the strong had a responsibility to protect the weak, not exploit them. The age of human expansion across the galaxy was about to begin, but it would be different from the Zephyrian model. Where the collective had ruled through fear, humanity would lead through example. Where they had demanded submission, humanity would offer partnership. As the Prometheus docked at Earth's primary naval station, Admiral Chin knew that she had witnessed the birth of something unprecedented in galactic history, a dominant species that used its power not to exploit others, but to ensure that what happened to New Terra could never happen again to anyone, anywhere. The galaxy had learned why you never, ever hurt a human child. The lesson would be remembered for a very long time.